Federal government accuses al-Zakzaki of being sponsored by Iran. President Muhammadu Buhari says he ordered the partial closure of the Nigeria-Benin border because of massive rice smuggling activities there. In international news, Hurricane Durian gains strength as it approaches Florida. In the sport, Nigerian hurdler Tobi Amusho breaks 20-year record, wins gold in 100 meters women's hurdles at the African Games.
This is ANN News.
I am Olajumoke Olatunji. The federal government of the Islamic movement in Nigeria, Sheikh Ibrahim Zakzaki, is being sponsored by Iran to replicate its 1979 violent revolution that led to the forceful takeover of power in the country. News Agency of Nigeria is reporting that in a newly filed court process, the federal government has stressed that members of the Islamic movement do not recognize President Muhammadu Buhari's authority. The government says the IMN leader and his sponsor, Iran, have a plan to forcefully turn the country into an Islamic state. Based on these accusations, the federal government is asking the courts to dismiss the lawsuit IMN had filed to challenge the order that prescribed its activities in the country. Deputy Commissioner of Police in the FCT Command, Eyinaya Diogo, told the court that from history and facts available, the sole aim of the Islamic movement in Nigeria is to create an Islamic state. He says Iranian leader Ayatollah Khomeini is the movement's main inspiration, to whom members first pledge allegiance at their gatherings, followed by a pledge to their local leader, Zakzaki. The court will hear the case in 2 weeks. President Muhammadu Buhari says Nigeria's border with Benin Republic is partially closed because of what he calls massive smuggling activities there, especially of rice. Buhari said this while meeting with his Benin counterpart, Patrick Talon, on Wednesday on the sidelines of the 7th Tokyo International Conference for African Development in Yokohama, Japan. The president said the smuggling activities threaten the self-sufficiency Nigeria had attained as a result of its government's agricultural policies. He said the partial border closure will enable security forces to formulate a strategy that would help diminish the threat and its wider ramifications. Benin's President Talon said the border closure is having severe impact on his people. One person has died in Ebonyi State in a bloody clash between a government task force and some shop owners in Abaka main market at the center of the state capital, Abakaliki. The government task force was said to have gone into the market to accost some shop owners for allegedly refusing to pay taxes. Eyewitnesses say the task force had sealed 7 shops for non-payment of taxes. They also said the deceased was trying to save the shop he had inherited from his father from being sealed. When he was warded off from members of the task force, he collapsed. It was gathered that the victim was still recuperating from a recent surgery. It was also revealed that the deceased was one of those who had sued the government for double taxation. They said their taxes had been paid to the chairman of the market, but the government said 57 million naira had allegedly been embezzled. Some shop owners have accused the government of using police to harass, assault, arrest and injure many of their members. Commissioner for Internal Security Stanley Okoro said some government-approved task force had gone to the market to enforce payment of state taxes, but denied knowledge of the crisis that ensued. Now that a federal high court in Abuja has denied the motion challenging the detention of Revolution Now convener Omoyele Sowore, senior lawyer Femi Falana, SAN, is mulling what his next step would be. Justice Taiwo had ordered Showore's continued detention 3 weeks ago, so the DSS could carry out and conclude its investigation on allegations leveled against him. Falana had asked the court to set aside the ex parte order granted by Justice Taiwo and also applied for oral bail when the earlier application was rejected by Justice Maha, who sent back the matter to Justice Taiwo for further hearing. Responding, Falana said his team will meet with Sowore to determine what to do next. The tumbling unemployment rate in the country has forced many job seekers to get creative in developing survival skills. Many have resorted to starting their own business, while some venture into fields never before considered, such as the case of scholar Obasi in Abuja. Reporter Deji Badmos has her story.
Starting her daily routine. In just under an hour, she's getting dressed to hit the road. Scholar Obasi is one of the very few women in Nigeria who are holding their own in what is considered a traditionally male occupation. She's an Uber driver. Though a graduate of environmental technology, she drives residents of Abuja to earn a living after hitting several brick walls in search of a job.
I got tired of looking for a job. You understand? I got tired of sending my CV to various people. So that was what motivated me.
She's been doing this job now for about 4 months, and she says she finds it interesting.
It has been an amazing experience. Do you get? It's worth doing. I commend it for everybody.
Some of her passengers admire her and commend her courage to work in a male-dominated field.
It beat my imagination to see a female behind the wheels working with Uber. With the level of unemployment in the country, I would advise that if elderly they can do the same thing, it's going to be better for them as well.
It's easy to think the job is a walk in the park. The scholar says bullying and harassment have become major challenges for her because of her gender.
I've been bullied severally. In fact, we are more vulnerable to men. I carried a matured man, and when I was driving him to where he was going to, he was making advances over me. He was telling me how we can go and have a drink. I told him that I'm working. You understand? And the most important thing is that you just have to play along for the fact that you're in a vehicle with them. You understand? Because you're very, very exposed. You understand? It's not like they're very distant away from you. So that was how I was able to manage it, the situation, before we got to his final destination.
Scholar is now taking the challenges of the job in her stride and trying to stay safe. For now, she remits about $70 to the owner of the car every week. She says her goal is to own hers and possibly set up a fleet to make more money and empower others.
Coming up, African news. Zambia truck drivers want to stay away from South Africa for threat of xenophobic attacks. And later, international news. Hurricane Durian gains strength as it approaches Florida.
You are watching ANN.
Dear mommy, you went out that night with the baby in your tummy, but you did not come back. The baby is very fine and she eats and sleeps a lot. Everyone says that you are in a better place, but I miss you so much. I keep asking them, where is the better place? But nobody answers me. Auntie Kerry just hugs me and says, go and play. Mommy, I miss you. Please, when are you coming home?
I still do miss you, Mom. And in honor of your memory, I'm a doctor today working with the MTN Foundation to save mothers and children every day.
Ending mother and child mortality in Nigeria is dear to us. We will keep strengthening this most important bond just for you.
Welcome back. This is CNN News. Now to African stories. Xenophobic attacks on foreigners in South Africa has extended to Zambian truck drivers, more than 200 of whom have been killed since March last year. The Zambian High Commission in Pretoria has warned its citizens who are truck drivers not to travel to South Africa from Monday, September the 2nd. That is a day when the locals plan to take to the streets in protest against foreign truck drivers. The Truck Drivers Association of Zambia has also sounded an alarm that Zambian truckers driving to or working in South Africa will be risking their lives starting on Monday. South African truckers have physically attacked their Zambian counterparts and have threatened violence against them. Local truckers are pushing for better working conditions. Zambian truck drivers planning to travel to South Africa on September the 2nd or scheduled to work on that day are being urged to park their trucks in safe and secure designated places until security was guaranteed. Uganda now has approval of the European Union to export medical weed products, paving the way for local cannabis growers to tap into the global legal marijuana market. Cannabis inspectors from the Netherlands were reported to have been in the country checking out marijuana gardens. At the end of their inspections, a certificate of compliance was issued to Industrial Globus Uganda Limited. Industrial Globus Director Benjamin Cadet confirmed the approval and explained that his company is a joint venture trading firm with Pharma of Israel. He said his company will export to the European market medical marijuana products made in Uganda. This year, the U.S. celebrates 400 years of the landing in America of the first African slaves. Ghana has been promoting what President Nana Akufo-Addo touts as the year of return. Many black Americans have been visiting Ghana to see historical slave structures and sites, and many of them are considering moving permanently to Ghana. Reporter Nabil Ahmed Rafai has the story of one black American who has already made the move.
Born in America, Jerry Johnson now calls Ghana home. He moved from Los Angeles in the U.S. to Ghana to settle permanently 15 years ago.
It's been very good being in Ghana, being in Africa in general. Anytime a black man is in a black country on a permanent basis, it's a good thing, although there are a lot of people who want to get out of a black country, but that's only because they don't fully understand the potential.
Jerry Johnson is a strong believer in the emancipation of black people, a political doctrine pioneered by political activist Marcus Garvey. He embarked on a tour of several West African countries to learn more about his ancestors and teach others about their collective history.
Coming here, recognizing that some of the people through the colonization process, I think, have lost the recipe. You know, now the work is how do we get the recipe back? How do we get the knowledge back, the confidence back, the courage back? And the best way to get courage back is to know who you are and what you've done. So Marcus Garvey used to always say, what man has done, man can do. And so, but if you don't know what you've done, then you don't know what you can do.
Johnson decided to settle in Ghana due to its political stability. Jerry Johnson says he built this African ancestral wall to educate people about Pan-Africanism. It has 92 portraits of leaders, activists, and scholars from the whole African diaspora.
Normal time, they call him the Amazon. Okay. That's the French, you know, from the mythical Amazon female warriors.
Johnson uses his ancestral wall to attract tourists and school children for a fee. He says he's seen an upsurge in African-American tourists this year, motivated to make the journey in the year of return.
I've heard a lot of pros and cons. You know, some people say, well, it's a PR thing to get, you know, money and tourism money. I say, well, maybe some people see it like that. But I think on balance, it's a good thing because no matter why people come, or no matter why they were whatever the motive was for inviting them, doesn't matter to me as much as the fact that they got here or they're coming here. Because once they come here, then they can see a lot of things for themselves.
Johnson has also found love here. He is married to a Ghanaian from the northern part of the country with whom he shares 2 children. His daughter has already expressed an interest in history.
This is Apoka Kariane. Apoka Kariane is a far-flung man from the northern part of Ghana. Young Apoka and her brother settled in a place called Bukere. This was the time when Africans were being caught by slavers and sent to work as slaves outside of Africa.
For Jerry Johnson, the year of return hasn't just been about attracting tourists, but inspiring a sense of pride in a shared history. He hopes more people will consider coming to resettle in Africa. Having found a home in Ghana, Jerry Johnson says he wants to continue sharing the values of the country's ancestral leaders. He believes this will help raise a generation of culturally conscious people capable of turning the fortunes of Africa around.
When we return, international news. Hurricane Durian gains strength as it approaches Florida. And later, sport. Tobia Amushno breaks 20-year record, wins gold in 100 meters women's hurdles at the African Games.
You are watching ANN.
Whether in your house, at your office, on your phone or online, we are there. We have the facts behind the headlines. We cut to the chase with the news you really need. We cover every angle. We are the bigger, better news network. We are African News Network. ANN. Watch ANN News on MITV from a truly African spirit.
Welcome back. This is ANN News. In foreign stories, Hurricane Durian is gaining more strength as it spares Puerto Rico that is still digging out from devastation caused in 2017 by another storm. Durian is now heading toward the U.S. state of Florida, where Governor Ron DeSantis has declared a state of emergency. He has also asked East Coast Floridians to load up with supplies of food and water enough for at least 7 days. Durian is expected to become a major hurricane by Friday, and the U.S. Coast Guard has warned that all pleasure boats at the port of Key West should seek safe harbor before the Labor Day holiday weekend begins. Ocean-going vessels have been told to make plans to leave the port ahead of the storm. Durian, a Category 1 storm, is expected to grow into a Category 3 with winds greater than 111 miles per hour by the time it makes landfall on Monday, most likely on Florida's eastern coasts. 28-year-old Rhonda Henry, who has allegedly pledged himself to ISIS and has planned to run over pedestrians in Washington, D.C., has been charged with attempting to support a terrorist organization. He was stopped before he could carry out the attack. Henry said he was inspired by ISIS when he stole a delivery van in Alexandria, Virginia in March, before driving it to Maryland the next day with the intent of using it as a weapon to hit pedestrians on sidewalks. The detention memo from early April says Henry harbored hatred for those not practicing the Muslim faith and had been inspired by the 2016 truck attack in France. The stolen delivery truck was found by law enforcement officials in late March, parked by the National Harbor in Washington, D.C. for the alleged planned attack. Henry was subsequently arrested by Maryland's Prince George's County Police before any attack could be attempted. Italy's President Sergio Mattarella has handed Prime Minister Giuseppe Conte a new mandate to head a coalition of the Five-Star Movement and Opposition Democratic Party. This has been described as a move that could mark a turning point in Italy's relationship with the European Union. Caretaker Prime Minister Giuseppe Conte has accepted this mandate and has vowed to lead a more united, inclusive Italy a week after the collapse of his government that was dominated by nationalists. He said Italy should play a leading role in Europe, a marked change from the policies of the right-wing lead Conte. Conte is a former law professor and had always accused Salvini of creating a political crisis for personal and party interest. After President Sergio Mattarella gave him the mandate, he said Italy had to make up for lost time as it was in a very delicate phase. Conte said he would make sure Italy becomes more competitive internationally. Prime Minister Boris Johnson's government has challenged Brexit opponents in Parliament to collapse the government or change the law if they wanted to thwart Britain's exit from the European Union. More than 3 years since the Brexit referendum, the United Kingdom is heading towards its gravest constitutional crisis in decades and a showdown with the EU over Brexit due in just 63 days. Speaker of the lower house of Parliament, John Bercow, said that was a constitutional outrage as it limited the time the 800-year-old heart of English democracy has to debate and shape the course of British history. Ruth Davidson has quit as leader of the Scottish Conservatives after 8 years on the job. The 40-year-old, who will continue as the MSP for Edinburgh Central, tweeted her resignation statement shortly before addressing the media at an event in Edinburgh on Thursday morning. President Trump is at it again with another thorny issue. This time is taking on members of the U.S. Armed Forces and other agencies of the federal government serving overseas. He has released a new policy that from the end of October, any of those categories of Americans who have children overseas will not have automatic U.S. birth rights for those children. They will now have to go through a formal application process to seek U.S. citizenship for their children when they are 18 years old. A government fact sheet, however, listed several caveats appearing to exempt many such children from the new requirements, including those with at least one U.S. citizen parent who lived in the United States before the child's birth. Currently, children born to U.S. citizens stationed by their government in a foreign country are legally considered to be residing in the United States and have automatic U.S. citizenship. Beyond that, the rationale for the policy revision remained unclear, and it most certainly will be added to a mountain of Trump policies before the courts. But
up next, sports. Nigerian hurdler Tobi Amusan breaks 20-year record, wins gold in 100 meters women's hurdles at the African Games. Histories.
You are watching ANN.
We are on the road every day, canvassing throughout Africa for news you really need. We follow this story everywhere, from every corner of Nigeria to the wide African expanse. We bring you what's making headlines. We connect you with news you can use. ANN, African News Network, in a truly African spirit.
welcome back. This is ANN News. In sport, Nigerian hurdler Tobi Amusan has broken a 20-year-old record previously held by another Nigerian, Gloria Alozie, in the 100 meters women's hurdles event at the African Games in Rabat, Morocco. Amusan set the new record in a time of 12.68 seconds. In the 1999 edition of the Games, Alozie clocked 12.74 seconds to set the now broken record. Amusan described the context as rough. The Flying Eagles will face Burkina Faso in the final of the men's football event on Friday at the ongoing 2019 African Games in Morocco. It will be the second time both teams will be meeting at the Games after they both played out a 1-1 draw in the opening match 2 weeks ago. Nigeria reached the final of the men's football event for the first time in 41 years, defeating Mali 5-4 on penalties after regulation time ended goalless. Meanwhile, Senegal and Mali will play for third place today, Thursday, at the Municipal Stadium El Mansouriya. That is ANN News this evening. Thank you for joining us. For details on these and other breaking stories, visit our website, annafrica.news. Conversation continues on our social media platforms, Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at ANN Africa TV. I am Olajumoke Olatunji. Have a pleasant evening.